A to Z Sports Detroit. We are joined by a Detroit Lions legend, also Oklahoma State legend, college football and NFL Hall of Famer. You know him, you love him, Barry Sanders. Barry, appreciate you for joining us today. I know we're talking about a really important cause that is close to your heart, but just want to thank you so much before we get going here and for joining the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no doubt. So obviously, I'm going to bug you about some football stuff, but I really want to start with the reason that we're here. And I know something that it means a lot to you, obviously. And I want to talk about the heart health campaign that you are doing with Amgen, which I know for people that don't know Amgen, it's a leading global biotechnology company that discovers, develops, manufactures, and markets human therapeutics. And I just kind of want to start off with just a general question as far as your partnership here, your initiative, your obviously push for heart health and awareness, and just want to talk about why that ultimately means so much to you.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to be able to partner with Amgen in this documentary. The documentary is called The Making of a Heart Attack, and it's going to be shown June 14th, 2 days from now, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on A&E. And it just follows my story. It follows the story of several other individuals, who've had heart attacks and strokes. And really, yeah, I'm excited about it because I think it's very informative, and I think a lot of people will really identify with it. And I'm excited to be just a heart health advocate. Just to be able to get the word out there. It impacts so many individuals, and it can happen at any time. It happens so frequently, and so we just need to be able to let people know that there's, hopefully there's certainly help by going and getting tested. You got to go to your doctor, ask about your LDL C levels, or your bad cholesterol levels, and know where you are. But yes, again, you can find out more if you go to attackheartdisease.com. But the first showing will happen this Saturday, June 14th on A&E at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, we'll definitely make sure that you guys tune in. And if you're interested in Amgen and just if you don't know too much about it, they have a great YouTube channel. I've been watching it the last couple of days since we set this up, just kind of getting some more information, some of the providers out there, and obviously some of the supports that they can provide. So make sure after this interview, if you want to go over on YouTube, you can search Amgen and AMGEN, and they have a really good YouTube channel that kind of gives you guys a lot of information ahead of that documentary. Barry, I wanted to ask just as far as, kind of working off of that though, how long have you been an advocate for this cause? Like, I'm just curious of like your full involvement and how long this has been obviously something that you have been spearheading, or this has been something that you've been very interested in and supporting as much as you possibly can with obviously the public figure that you are.
Well, yeah. So my heart incident, it happened a year ago, mid-June of 2024. And throughout that process of recovery, I end up being introduced to Amgen, who was working on this documentary. It just so happened that Amgen was creating this documentary. And so I guess my involvement, as a heart health advocate has maybe been, I don't know, 6 to 9 months or maybe 6 months, something like that. I'm fairly recent amount of time. And so, yeah, I think I'm doing the math right, but yeah, well, only within the last year. I'll say it like that.
Gotcha. And obviously those experiences have pushed you to being where you are now with helping with the cause. Wanted to ask if you could repeat one more time for the people that want to support this cause. Obviously, we'll take a look at the documentary this weekend, or this past weekend. We'll actually be showing this a little bit after the fact, but make sure that you tune into that documentary. But if for people there that want to help this cause and make sure that it is on the front of their mind and that they are able to help, if they are able to help, where can they go?
Yeah, well, the important thing, yeah, is certainly go to attackheartdisease.com, and get tested. Ask your doctor about giving you a test for your bad cholesterol or LDLC levels. And so I know it's recommended generally that you go to your doctor once a year or whatever it is. So, along with some of those other conversations, maybe ask about your LDLC level and being tested for that, just in case you're, maybe at risk, like so many people are, and you don't because you're not necessarily going to experience any major symptoms or anything like that. So really the only way to find out is by being tested by your doctor. So again, attackheartdisease.com. Learn more about that, but certainly ask your doctor about your LDLC levels.
Yep. No, I could not agree more. Unfortunately, heart disease does run in my family, so we are tested very frequently to make sure that we stay on top of that stuff for sure. And I know this is a little bit of a tough pivot, obviously, talking about such a serious topic and your involvement, but it's obviously a Detroit Lions channel as well, and I know that they are just so excited to be able to hear from the best player in obviously in history of the organization. So I really wanted to just talk about first and foremost we talk about the involvement in the great cause, but I want to talk about your involvement still around the city of Detroit. And I kind of wanted to start that out by going back. And I know that you were originally from Kansas. Obviously, you went to Oklahoma State. I have to imagine that initially, when the Detroit Lions became the city and the organization that was going to be your new home, had to be a little bit of a culture shock back in the day, a little bit. So I just wanted to ask about like your initial impressions of the city of Detroit and just how much that's evolved, obviously, over many years now.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, my exposure to Detroit growing up was watching the Lions on Thanksgiving. And one of my favorite players in the world was drafted to the Lions, Billy Sims. So I watched Billy in college at the University of Oklahoma, and so when he was drafted to the Lions, I paid some attention to the Lions, and so when I decided I was coming out of school, and I did my pro day in Detroit. The coach at that time was the interim coach, Wayne Fonts. And I did my pro day, I ran my 40, I did my vertical jump, all those things. And Coach Fonts pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, young man, if you're there when we draft, when we pick, we're gonna pick you." I mean, so it was very informal. There's nothing signed or anything like that. And so I had a pretty good idea that the Lions were going to draft me. So I was excited I was going to play in the NFL, honestly. And so that's kind of how things worked out. After being drafted, my first time in Detroit was at a preseason game, and because I was holding out that summer, I wasn't with the team during camp, but I did come to a preseason game and watch them play. I forgot who they played, but it was in the Silverdome, and that was my first impressions of like seeing the NFL live. But I was excited to get here, and this was 1989, and we were out at the Pontiac Silverdome. Detroit was going through a tough time then, honestly, like 1989. I mean, downtown was like a ghost town, right? I mean, there was nothing down there. Most of the time when I went downtown, I was passing through to go to Windsor. People would go to Windsor, Canada, instead of stopping in downtown Detroit because there was nothing really there to do. So anyway, so yeah, that was, but I was excited to be here with the Lions. That they hadn't won much, and the city was going through a tough time, and the Lions were certainly way down. I mean, they just weren't a very well respected franchise. Was never competing within the division. Hadn't been to the playoffs in I don't know how many years, 10 years or something like that. So that's kind of, I forgot the original question, but that's kind of the scene of what I
Yeah.
stepped into in 1989.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Well, I think that's a great segue to just being through some of those tough times, or especially seeing, because I know you made the playoffs while you were a Detroit Lion. It was better, obviously, than maybe it had been previously. But obviously, there's been struggles just historically with the Lions. But what's it like now as a player removed in retirement to see the success they're having now, obviously, and the sustainability that Coach Campbell and his entire staff has been able to build there?
It's amazing. It's amazing. And as a former player, I just applaud the current organization, the way they put together each piece, to make it a winner. And you look at Brad Holmes, you look at Coach Campbell, Sheila Fordham, Rod Wood, Chris Spillman, former teammate, and pretty much everything they've done, right, has worked. They've been able to really create great culture and chemistry with these current players, and just drafting the right players, bringing in the right players, and so. But it is exciting because you realize that there's so many fans that have invested so much into this team. Even in those tough years, there were still fans coming out, many fans coming out supporting the team. So it's nice to see them rewarded for their loyalty. And we know that this team has greatness, that it can achieve. They've been just like that close, to making it to the Super Bowl just a couple years ago. And last year even was a phenomenal year, having first round bye and winning the division. And so, yeah, I mean, as a former player, it's been really rewarding to see that, and this is a really good time, for this team, for this organization, and we know that, just like Philadelphia won the championship last year. I see some similarities just in that, when they hired a new coach just a few years ago, they had their ups and their downs, and even like, they went to the Super Bowl and lost. Then it's like they disappeared for a season. And 2024, 2025, they won the championship. And so I feel like we're right there with them as far as in the NFC. And obviously, they have great players. They brought in Saquon, but I feel like we're right there. And
Yeah.
anything can happen in this league, but I think we are sort of the class of the NFC, along with a few other teams. Philly's in there, and obviously Minnesota's in there. We don't know what we're going to get with the Niners, but at the top of the NFC, the Lions are there, and that's really all you can ask as a fan. So to answer your question, yeah, as a former player, really really excited about what has happened, and there are just a lot of things, a lot of positive things going on with the organization.
Want to send a quick shout out to former Detroit Lions legend Barry Sanders for joining me again today. Make sure, folks, to stay up to date on his heart health initiative and heart health campaign. You can go to Amgen now at amgen.com. You could also go to YouTube, search Amgen if you want any additional information. Make sure to check out the documentary that Barry dropped and was a part of this past weekend. We will be sure to put a link to that in the chat. Make sure to hit a like button and subscribe on your way out of the channel. And as always, go Lions.